Alright, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Jordan Peitzman. We're back for another episode of the Caulifl-Hour. Today on the show, we're going to be recapping a couple of events that we previewed on last week's shows. The first of which is Finishers 11's Survivor Series team quintet style event that took place out on the East Coast this weekend. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. We'll also be talking about cosized 8-man heavyweight tournament, which did not disappoint. I talked about how I typically don't get too excited for heavyweight tournaments, but why I was excited for this particular lineup, and it did not disappoint, like I said, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Also on the show today, we'll be talking about, we won't necessarily be previewing, but we'll be talking about some of the matchups at Who's Number One taking place this Saturday, February 8th. That'll be on Flow Grappling. I believe that's promoted in part with Fight to Win and Seth Daniels as well, so make sure you check that one out. But before we get to that, we're just going to talk about a couple of current events here in the Jiu-Jitsu community. Coming up on February 21st, Substars has began releasing matchups for their star-studded lineup. We've got the rematch between Keenan and Gaudio. Gaudio has his upcoming match against Gordon on Third Coast Grappling. Stay tuned. We'll be previewing that event as it gets a little bit closer. Cyborg, who we'll be talking about later on the show today, coming fresh off of his Kasai heavyweight tournament victory. He'll be taking on Rafael Lovato at this event. We also have Gary Tonin versus Dustin Diamond Poirier, Enrique Coco versus Ethan Krellinston, Wagner's on the card, Nicky Rod's on the card, Rumble Johnson. Incredible star power on this event. I think them and Third Coast Grappling are putting together the best events right now, so great competition going on between the two of them. But Monday morning, we woke up to an announcement of what will be their main event. Gordon Ryan tweeted out a promotional poster that saw his profile standing across from that of Tex Johnson. We're going to bring it up here on the screen so that you guys can see and read along with me, but the caption reads, "This will only be fun for one of us, and not worth the $75 you're getting paid to show up and compete. You'd enjoy sticking to Ubering more. My knee will be on your face for minutes, and then I will submit you. Good luck, buddy, and try to show up sober." Now, most people would probably read that and think, dang, that's cold. But I'm going to be honest, I think Gordon pulled the punch on this one. Call me crazy, but based on the alleged dirt on Tex Johnson and Gordon's general tendency to go all in on his opponents, I honestly don't think that what he said was all that outrageous. Disrespectful? Absolutely. But nowhere near what I would have expected from Gordon Ryan when he was announcing a matchup with Tex Johnson. So I don't know. What does that mean? Maybe Gordon likes Tex a little bit. One thing that I did find interesting, and we'll bring it up here on the screen so that you guys can read along, Gordon reveals that he will be donating 100% of his purse money to the We Defy Foundation, which is actually pretty awesome. We Defy is an organization that provides scholarships and gear to veterans with combat-related injuries and PTSD. They're a really, really great organization. Our gym, No Coast BJJ, actually puts together fundraising events and donates to We Defy. I know Ryan McGuire, the CEO of Third Coast Grappling, is heavily involved with the We Defy. He's a veteran himself. So say what you want about Gordon Ryan, but I actually think that this is a really positive thing that he's using his platform to promote. Maybe this is the sign of things to come. Maybe this will mark the beginning of Gordon using his platform at the top of the submission grappling world to do a lot of positive and constructive things. So regardless of what you take away from that situation, Substars is putting on an absolutely incredible event coming up on February 21st down in Miami. We'll be doing a full preview of that event on the show in 2 weeks, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, you guys can check out their social media handles to stay up to date with everything that they are working on. And like I said, I think them and Third Coast Grappling are putting together the best BJJ supercards right now. They're the biggest high-profile competitors. They're the matches that everybody wants to see, the rematches, etc. So again, that's Substars, Miami, Florida, February 21st. Stay tuned for our full preview in 2 weeks. Next up, we'll be making quick mention of Who's Number One being put on by Flow Grappling in conjunction with Seth Daniels and Fight to Win this Saturday, February 8th in Costa Mesa. This is an event that Flow Grappling conducted back in October to highlight and promote the number one high school wrestlers in the nation, and that was obviously headlined by a match that many of you probably watched, Nicky Rod versus Pat Downey, which, by the way, will be we will get to see the rematch coming up at Third Coast Grappling in March. Again, we'll be doing a full preview of that event as we get a little bit closer, but those two will be facing off in a hybrid rule set between wrestling and grappling, similar to what we saw with Bo Nickel and Gordon Ryan. So be sure to check that one out. Seth Daniels and Flow Grappling have been working together to create grappling's version of Who's Number One, and that, like I said, will take place this Saturday, February 8th in Costa Mesa. They've put together some really, really interesting matchups. We'll take you through the rundown here. In the main event, at least I believe it's the main event, we have Nicholas Marigali taking on Victor Hugo. We also have Keenan Cornelius taking on Roberto Jimenez. I think that's an incredibly interesting matchup for the reason that Roberto has just recently got his black belt, and we're throwing him in there with one of the top in the world, so it'll be interesting to see how he matches up against Keenan in that. There's also a couple guys on the card from Atos that I've personally been able to train with, the first of which, the Scorpion King, Adam Bradley, aka Trab. We also have Connor DeAngelis, another absolute monster who people should be on the lookout for. He's a brown belt from Atos, so check out that one. Andrew Tackett, who we've talked about on the show the last 2 weeks, he got second place in Jits King's 145-pound tournament coming up, 2 points short of beating Ethan Krellinston in the finals, and he also won his super fight last weekend at Kasai, so be on the lookout for him as well. We've got Jacob Rosales, aka Little Badger. He trains out of CSW headquarters in Fullerton, California. Eric is obviously the head of my affiliation, so got to make a shout out for him. Wes Levine, who recently got his black belt under the 10th Planet banner. So a lot of really fun matchups and grapplers that I personally like to watch. So make sure you check that out this Saturday. It's going to start at 4 p.m. on the West Coast, 7 p.m. on the East Coast, 6 p.m. right here in the Central Time Zone. Again, that'll be live on Flow Grappling, so make sure you check that one out. All right, and next up on the show, we will be heading into the recap portion of our episode. We will be recapping Finishers 11, which we talked about last week on the show. For those of you that missed that preview last week, this was a team grappling event. Similar to Quintet, the only rule change was that the team did not have to make a total weight. Actually, all 5 members of the team had to weigh in at 145 pounds. So they put together 6 teams. We had 10th Planet Montreal, Team Show the Art, Uchiha Clan, the other guys, 10th Planet Finishers, and Team Henzo Gracie. So I gotta say, I was actually really, really impressed and excited about the way that this event played out. The first round matchups were incredibly high-paced and entertaining. Things slowed down a little bit during the semifinals and the final rounds, but it was still very action-packed. These 145-pound grapplers never stop moving, right? They're super, super exciting to watch, and I could hardly keep up. We did end up with the final that I predicted, and that was 10th Planet Finishers taking on Team Henzo Gracie. There was a little bit of a curveball that changed the way that my prediction was able to play out. My prediction and my summary was that Ethan Krellinston was going to be too much for Team 10th Planet Finishers, and that he would lead Team Henzo Gracie to the victory. In an interesting turn of events, Ethan Krellinston actually didn't even participate in this event. He sustained a minor injury at Jits King the weekend before and was forced to pull from the event, unfortunately. So while I do think that his presence in the event could have affected the turnout, that's ultimately not what happened, right? Team 10th Planet drug Team Henzo Gracie to the very, very end. All 5 matchups resulted in a draw, and that set up an incredibly climactic overtime final. They had what I thought was actually a really cool wrinkle in the rule set, and that was if it came down to the final 2 members of each team, and that matchup ended in a draw, each team would choose a member of the other team to represent for a 3-round EBI-style final in overtime. It was a 3-round EBI format, but it only needed 1. It placed Zach Maslany, the very owner of the promotion, against Tony Bergamo from Team Henzo Gracie. And Bergamo took the back first, and Zach was able to escape in a relatively short amount of time. In the second round of overtime, Maslany elected to take the back as well, and as Bergamo looked to escape the position by getting his shoulders flat to the mat, Zach was able to transition to a very beautiful head and arm triangle, and we'll take a look at it here. It looks like Bergamo is going to be able to get that elbow to the mat and escape the position, but Maslany continues to dig that head underneath the tricep and the elbow and is able to lock it in. It's game, set, match. good night. 10th Planet Finishers wins Survivor Series over Team Renzo Gracie. And now I've heard rumblings that this might have been Zach's retirement performance, and if that is truly the case, I cannot confirm or deny. I just want to say congratulations, Zach, and what an incredible way to go out. I know Zach's got a very, very successful school out in Pennsylvania. Finishers has been a great and successful venture for him as well. I've got a lot of respect for what that guy does in the jiu-jitsu community. So if this truly is the end of his competition career, I say congratulations to you, Zach. If you guys haven't already, be sure to check out that free replay. It is on the Finishers TV YouTube channel. They always put that out for free. They've been offered money by Flow Grappling and have elected to always keep their event free. So lots of respect to those guys for doing that. I'll include a link down in the description so that you guys can check that out as well. Like I said, over 5 hours of incredibly exciting matches. So make sure you check that one out. All right, next up on the show, we'll be recapping an event that we talked about on the show last week, and that is cosized 8-man heavyweight tournament. I talked about how I typically don't get that excited for heavyweight tournaments, but why I was excited for this particular one, and I gotta say it did not disappoint. We got to see a lot of really great matchups. We got to see a couple rematches, the biggest of which Cyborg versus Nicky Rod, and I gotta say I actually enjoyed the match. A lot of people said that it was a stalemate, but what I saw was a guy in Nicky Rod who was pushing the action, who was putting positional pressure on Cyborg throughout the matchup, and while he was not able to secure any dominant positions officially, he was not able to score any points. We saw a much improved guard passing game from Nicky Rod. He was threatening continuously with that knee slice guard pass, and he also got a couple looks at near back takes. Ultimately, he was not able to capitalize. Like I said, no points were scored, and this match ended in a draw. We also saw him capture a heel hook victory over Bruno Bastos, so I think that speaks to the evolution of Nicky Rod's game, showing that he is constantly adding tools to his arsenal and will only get better from here on out. We also saw a rematch between Kyle Bain and Lucas Hulk Barbosa. Their initial matchup at the end of last year was in the finals of the BJJ Fanatics Grand Prix, and that saw Kyle Bain walk away the winner and the owner of $10,000 there in the finals. This time, Lucas was able to walk away with the 4-0 victory. We also saw Kyle Bain quickly submit Zhao Hosha with an outside heel hook in the opening seconds of their match. Zhao complained that he stopped because he thought that Kyle's toes were caught in his shorts, but Kyle didn't stop. The referee did not call for a pause in the action, so the submission victory was given to Kyle, as it absolutely should have been. Zhao should have continued fighting until the referee told him to stop. The final bit of controversy in the group stage came after Vinny Magalhaes was forced to pull out via injury after his match with Nicky Rod. This, in the third round of the group stage, gave Cyborg the forfeit victory over Magalhaes and pushed him into the final ahead of Nicky Rod, who had the only submission of the entire group by getting that outside heel hook over Bruno Bastos. Regardless, this set up a third-place match between Nicky Rod and Kyle Bain, and we continued to see that improved guard passing game and positional dominance of Nicky Rod that we talked about earlier in the show. Nicky Rod was able to secure the back and then the mount and was able to take the victory 4-0, placing himself third in that Kasai heavyweight tournament. The finals placed Cyborg against Otto standout Lucas Hulk Barbosa, and I've got to say, Cyborg could not have looked better. He was on absolute fire in this matchup. He was positionally dominant. He was able to get a giant suplex, which we'll take a look at here. Absolutely beautiful. And a bloodied but not beaten Cyborg is able to claim the Kasai Heavyweight Grand Prix. All right, everybody, that looks like that's all we've got for you on the show today. Go ahead and slap that like button and bump that subscribe to stay tuned for future episodes. I can guarantee you guys that we'll be putting out an episode every Thursday, but sometimes I might do it earlier. I might do it on Monday, I might do it on Tuesday, I might do it on Sunday, okay? I don't really like to lock myself into that. I know people say that to stay consistent and to keep maximizing your viewership, you should always release your podcasts and your videos on the same day, but that just doesn't really seem natural to me. I just want to put out content whenever I feel like putting out content, so that's the way I'm going to do it. I'm Jordan Peitzman. This is the Caulifl-Hour. We're out.